Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 7 o'clock, and I'm going to call the March 24th, 2020 meeting to order. We have some technical problems. I'll just pause for 1 second.
What are you streaming?
You need to hit mute.
What are you streaming?
Lauren will. No.
Don't think so.
Right now, we have Councillor Taylor and Councillor Schwab, who are video conferencing in, and we can see them and they can see us, but they are not available to the public for viewing. This is a very unusual meeting. As you'll notice, we have taken measures to ensure social distancing has been provided to all councillors, and we encourage all the public in every setting to make sure that continues. First order of business is the adoption of the agenda. Administration, do you have any changes that you wish to add or subtract?
Yes, Your Worship, we wish to defer both the public hearing items, bylaw 124320 and 124420, as well as business arising from the minutes, which is bylaw 124320 and 124420, for reasons that we cannot allow for this meeting people to be able to participate in the public hearing.
Thank you. Do we anticipate in the future the municipal government will come out with procedures that will allow us to move forward?
Yes, Your Worship, I did have some preliminary discussions with the municipal affairs advisors today, and they hope there will be some communication coming out in a few days that might take care of that situation.
Thank you. Council, are there any additions? Deputy Mayor Olford?
I'd like to add 13.3, FOIP, section 17, please.
Thank you. Council? Not seeing any. Could I get a motion? And Deputy Mayor Olford?
I'll move the agenda be approved as amended.
Discussion on that motion? All in favor? Actually, Councillors Taylor and Laura, if you want to raise your hand, we can see them up here. So our first order of business is a delegation, a quasi-delegation. We are going to have a PowerPoint presentation. Go ahead, CEO Thompson.
Okay, so for obvious reasons, we did not allow TELUS to come forward to participate in this delegation. However, we thought that this item is fairly important because we are having some difficulty within some of the areas of the community with cell phone coverage. And so this initiative with the additional tower will go a long ways towards helping with that. Council was provided the presentation materials as well as the PowerPoint presentation. I'll quickly go through the PowerPoint presentation with you. Again, I'm not a TELUS representative, so it's a little strange that I'm standing up here talking about this. The importance of the radio communication broadcasting services are used by the public for safety, security, government services, and things like that. And that's one of the reasons why this item is coming forward tonight. Could you advance that? So this just talks about a little bit about community involvement. Go to the next slide. The talks about a little bit of their wireless subscriptions in Canada, how many people have mobile phones, and things like that. Go to the next one. Then. This shows a little bit how networks work as well. Next one. Why an additional telecommunication facility is needed is to enhance the network capacity and coverage and improve wireless connectivity within the community. And there was attempts to co-locate and site selection with some other providers. And there's some factors considered in the decision by TELUS to have their own tower. There is protocol that they have to follow for federal recognized innovation, science, and economic development. Canada's client procedures. There's a circular referencing that. Municipal preferences for location, such as industrial areas and commercial areas, and process, notification, packages, and notices, and that's why this item's before council tonight is part of that process. This shows existing telecommunications facility in the municipality. So you'll see the blue one at the bottom of the legend is Bell, the red one's Rogers, the green's TELUS, and the white is all others that would Freedom Mobile. We'll go next slide. This is an aerial view of the location, which is up off Broadway Avenue, and next to the existing Freedom Mobile Tower.
And the formal address is 5505 Broadway Avenue.
That's right, Worship. The tower height is 35 meters plus a 3.5 meter lightning rod, and the access would be off Broadway Avenue. This just shows the existing tower site with a simulation of what the additional tower would look like next to it. This just shows a different view of the site. So the tower to the left would be the TELUS tower as indicated. So in conclusion, the benefits telecommunication services are beneficial for communities, additional choice for consumers, and increased competition by service providers, improve access to emergency services, including non-customers, and support for emerging technologies. So the next steps would be for TELUS to apply for a development permit and require a municipal statement of concurrence, support and satisfying that innovation, science, and economic development is provided through this. And that's it. So this is just for information, Your Worship, as part of the process that Council requires for these types of installations. And that was the purpose of providing this information as a delegation.
Thank you. So councilors, if you have questions that you want CEO Thompson to take back and provide us at a later date, then now's your time to ask the questions.
Yes.
Thank you. My only question was just to make sure that putting the tower in where its proposed location is going to improve cell service on the east side of town, because I feel that the majority of calls that we get saying that it's the east side of town that has connectivity issues. So, okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I have one question.
Oh, sorry.
Or actually two questions. The first one is development permit approval, can it be done through our development officer, or does it have to come to NPC?
I believe it's through the development officer, Your Worship, but if the response isn't what I provided, then we'll follow up.
And the second question I do have is that, well, these are fairly standard moving forward. I know other communities have requested and required that they make it more attractive in different ways. And I'm wondering if it would be possible for our development authority to look at that as a consideration. I'm not sure it's something that came through that, well, most of them have been approved. There have been requests to make them look nicer than they are. And I'm sure that TELUS has experience that they might be able to do that.
Well, we'll have that discussion with planning development as well as with the group that agreed with this board and see if there's any opportunity for that motion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor has a question.
Sorry, Councillor Taylor?
Yes. I like that question about the east side. My question would be for Callis do they have any plans for any towers for the east side of Blackfalds? I think that's an area where there seems to be a lot of issues.
Your worship, through Councillor Taylor, this would satisfy the needs for the east side as well as out into the rural areas.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Sierra Thompson. There are no public hearings, no business arising from the minutes, so we'll move on to business. First order of business is 6.1, Blackfalds multiplex expansion. And we have Director Barnes.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I do have Edo Cancer from up here as well. As you know, we've been working on this project for the last 15, 16 months. Parts has been fun, some hasn't, but we're here now. We did have 19 submissions. We did evaluation at the RFQ to 8, and from that 8, we did an evaluation to the top 3 that's presented tonight. And before we get into more of the nitty-gritty of it, do you want to go talk about in regards of how we went through the whole process?
Absolutely, Director Burns. Thank you, Council, Your Worship. The process was a submission of an RFP document to the 8 shortlisted proponents. That was posted through the regular means, APC, I believe it was Merck's, and then through the Construction Associations of Alberta, Red Deer, Edmonton, and Calgary. In that process, we provided documentation and specifications as required to obtain a return tender with a condition of evaluation that was specific to the RFP, which included things like value of work, experience, project experience, staff experience that were going to be on the project, and other value-added components that we requested, one of which was providing council and the various boards targeted value design approaches that in the event that the project was in excess of the value that was understood by council or understood by even the consulting team, that we had opportunities to look at those targeted value designs to get it to the appropriate level of work and funding so that it can be brought in front of, I believe the other day, the rec board for recommendation to this body and then formal approval and award to the construction manager.
Yeah. Thanks, Edo. So, like I said, we came to the top 3. Now, if you can kind down there to the next page there. Do you have the?
I have the stick that I need. Would that be it?
No, but you have the second page in regards of the. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So, of course, we went through here. Now, Edo, do you want to go through? I know General Construction is with Eagle Builders. That's from Blackfalds. Canada was second, and then Stuart Olson was third. So I'll have Edo go through all 3 of them, and then why we are going towards administration and recreation recommendation for Delnor Eagle Builders.
Sure. Thanks, Director Barnes. Out of the 8 submitted, there were 4 that were clearly separated in terms of evaluation, both in points as well as the value of the GMP. There's only 3 listed here because one of those proponents was not compliant with the submission. They failed to recognize or submit their core requirements. So based on that, we were left with 3 submissions that were brought forward for evaluation: Delnor, Canna, and Stuart Olson. And at the time, if you see the GMP listed, as noted, Delnor was at 31.122, Canada was at 31.918, and Stuart Olson was at 32.567 on or abouts. When you look at the component of work that we requested in terms of target value design, you can see that the approaches from each one of those components are slightly different. Delnor's targeted value design is 4.1, Canada is 3.875, and Stuart Olson is 2.67, which left a net new cost identified in this spreadsheet, which was 26.9 for Del Norte, 28.048 for Canada, and 29.870. At that point in time, all things being equal and evaluated, the request that we made as the consulting team with our engineering staff to the rec board the other day was to provide a recommendation to this council to enter into a CM contract at risk to Del Norte Construction and Eagle Builders for a targeted value approach. And that's what we're here to, I believe, CEO Thompson, to decide what that value is. Now, I know we had some very good questions when we were going through this process on why are we doing a construction management delivery. And I think the important thing is when the you know what hit the fan on both the current predicament that we're in and the value of the work that was done. And that is, if this was a stipulated subcontract or a design bid build or a DBB, you would have a low number and that's your number. You can decide whether to accept it or reject it. And if you accept it, in our experience, including our experience with the Abbey Center, if you ask for value engineering at the time, not targeted value design, but value engineering, it's very rare that you would get a dollar's worth of savings for a dollar's request of scope. It's always a percentage of what you're requesting. That's in essence, the factors that affect a stipulated subcontract. In an at-risk construction management contract in CCDC 5B, the intent is that you award the contract and the pre-construction services to the proponent that we identified either through the evaluation sheet or in this case, value sheet, as well as the new cost based on the targeted value design approach that they used, and awarded as a pre-construction services for a value of cost. And then in the next 2 months or 3 months, we do the phase called pre-construction services to work as a design team and a build team to execute the targeted value design to bring this project in alignment with the GMP that is going to be decided by this group. All proponents identified what their targeted value design opportunities were. I have them. I'm not sure if we have to go through them, Director Barnes, if you want to.
Which,
So TBD items?
We will in a second.
In a second. Okay, so basically they all identified targeted value approaches in which we got to the target value design reduction. And then as your design team, we offered targeted value design considerations that we believe were not mentioned by the proponent, as well as some mechanical ones, albeit our mechanical team is working remotely and the number they provided was small and just a guess. And we have one that's substantial for the electrical, which would have brought us down to the 24.7357 million that you see there as an adjusted cost.
Your Worship, I just want to know if there's any questions from councillors on regards to the process and where we're at this time, before we go into some other deliberations on regards to what else we've got. Anything on regards to construction
Council?
or the process?
So as you're going through the explanation, are you gonna start at point 1, which is what is included in this contract? Because there are a number of items that are above and beyond the actual arena bill and library bill.
How you got to 23.8?
Well, how do we get to 23.8?
Yes.
He's asking.
Okay, so the 23.8 million came from, and I know from council approving it that the capital budget, or during the budget process, was $20 million was going towards the library and the Twin Arena. $1 million, approximately $1 million is going to the junior A, which is in and out, so it's $21 million for that facility. We do have $2.8 million for the water and sewer and storm upgrade. That's in the budget. So that adds up to $23.8 million. That's what we have in the budget right now.
Go ahead.
So essentially, it's 23.8, but the AJHL is paying one of that.
Yes,
So
correct,
we're-
approximately. Yes.
So it's technically only 22.8 that council is on the hook for.
That's correct.
Okay, and it's 22.8 up from the 22.5 because of the storm
The stormwater
project.
upgrade was
Okay.
already in the budget.
Okay, perfect.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that's where we're at right now, is the $24.7 million, which is $900,000 over the budget. Now, I think what we should do, Mr. Thompson, should we just go through the target value engineering? Okay, if we can go to that, Ed, and we'll go through that.
Which is
The ones that are confidential, it's called TBD. Summary.
Yeah, which is the sheet that you want. You've got
Yeah.
400.
This one. If you bring one up, I can.
It should be on there. So you had it already sent to council. Excuse me. Council members, you do have the one that was sent out to you?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's 50.
Thank you. Do you have that copy, Ann?
She just can put it. Sorry for the delay.
Because I could forward it.
Any other questions? Well, guys looking for what I put in on the screen here? Okay. Just to let you know, Rec Board did ask a lot of questions. Which was good. Okay. Okay, I don't just talk about in regard to your
Sure.
TBD and what you've done with that.
Thank you, Director Barnes, Council. There are a number of targets in the contractor target value design considerations. They're itemized and separated between the three components to equal the totals that you saw in the previous slide of 4.1, 3.8, and 2.6 million. Before I start, I don't know if you want me to go through line item by line item. I think they're self-evident, but these were proposed by the proponents, and within that, if they were to be accepted carte blanche, then your risk for this project is the 26 point some odd $million, and that would be a walkaway number, and that's what we would work to. But you need to think of these target value considerations as well as the ones we identified architecturally as sort of a menu board. It's a kit of parts. If our target at the end of this council hearing is X number of GMP dollars, that's the exercise. And within that exercise, you see in front of you many considerations, both from the proponent as well as the architect and the engineering teams that were just numbers that were provided to us. Those are that menu board, and we need to get to the number that this council approves. And then we will propose back to council what we've done to get there. And then it's a matter of saying yes or no to that final scope of work. So these choices are never easy. They're very difficult to make because you're looking at things that were probably near and dear and how we presented them to council and your community through the open houses engagement process. But it's a choice that at least we can make to execute in its full intent. The actual program spaces that we have, there are no plans for program cuts. Architecturally, we've offered some up, but we can still work on those. The other thing that I'd like to mention is when you're working in a collaborative process through a at-risk construction management process, there are still approaches called lean approaches that could see an exit between 2 to 2.5% of the contracted value, which is a significant number just through sequencing and priorities. And I hate to say it, but in the condition that we're in, schedule, which was quite a bear in this project, you saw that from some of the extraneous values in GMP that were provided. There were many proponents that didn't think that the site work could have been completed in time that was identified in the proposal. That adds risk to those proponents, and the risk was demonstrated in the value of their GMPs. So if by sheer happenstance in the environment that we're in, there perhaps will be supply chain interruptions which will extend that contract value, then that risk could be eliminated. And then like everybody else, even in the Delnor Eco build or submittal, there is risk built into that as well. That's why they GMP it. It's not fully tendered as of yet, but it can't be any greater than that number. That's what the GMP is. So, having said that, we have simple generic items like reduction of interior planting and landscaping, review the foundation details, which is a technical understanding of the use of precast by Eagle rather than the structural steel that we have put in place. Removal of the glue lamps and replaced with steel joist assemblies. Split the glue lamp design to reduce transportation costs. That was provided by Canna. Actually, there could have been a source in Switzerland, but now that's gone. Remove or reduce the specific phenolic metal panels, replace with alternate product. Consider the use of an alternate sprinkler contractor in a GMP price. Perhaps the sprinkler contractors were not ready to do the heavy lifting. Just a little technical aside, the authority having jurisdiction requires sprinklers to be designed for a building permit. Sprinkler or mechanical sub-consultants do not provide sprinkler design. It's a sprinkler contractor. Unless you hire them, they won't do the work to do the design. So there possibility is some savings in just getting that work executed. Revisions to landscaping, exterior masonry, alternate modular wall art panels. We do have some decorative panels in there. Dasher board system in glass, alternate supplier. Considered using a RAM manufacturing lift, and this was brought up at rec board by Councillor Taylor. Confirmed that it's not a RAM lift like you have here. It is an elevator. Just I think it was a typo. Changing the roofing details to a standing seam roof. Change the metal roofing to a calcium aluminum metal roof. Precast structural concrete, which is the Eagle component of this build, which would mean we would revise our drawings to suit their technical details, which we have committed to doing at no additional cost. Switch to alternate phenolic panel system. Phenolic panels are the panels that finish the outside of the building. And concrete masonry unit block walls in lieu of abuse-resistant drywall, which I'd still like to understand because Canna said that it was a reduction. I've yet to see concrete block a reduction to abuse-resistant drywall. Some of these are more difficult to choose than others. I'm assuming the glue lamps would be one of them, but there is a $2.2 million credit for glue lamps. So it's a significant amount of money. But in essence, those identified by the proponent team of Delnor Eagle does not in any effect change the programming and the spaces identified within the whole project, albeit at a $26 million number. So the identification of the target and value design considerations by the architectural team may seem a little more brutal, but they are things that we need to consider. If I could, I'd rather not go through all of them. The biggest one is the southeast exit stair that's highlighted in ochre or yellow. You can scroll down, please. We added that stair. It's enclosed on that side of it. It's the very first one that you see, not the convenience one, because we feel that it is an exit stair requirement by the authority having jurisdiction. We've talked to GHL, which is a code consultant out of Vancouver. We believe that we do not need that stair as an exit. We could probably defend that the convenience stair, the big wide one that goes up to the second floor, could be used as an exit as long as we have more than 2 exits from the second floor. We have 3, and that the distance that you have to travel to go from one exit to the farthest point within a person standing or sitting or being in place is not greater than 10% more than the 45 meters that's required by code. So I believe we could fall into that, and we can certainly ask the AHJ to consider that as an opportunity. That stair would be somewhat expensive, and removing it in its entirety would be a cost savings that we would not have considered at any point in time. So again, these are many components of opportunity, and again, we haven't really touched base with mechanical to get a firm cost other than a number that said 90,000, which I don't think is realistic. I think it's a little more than that. And electrical did provide us with a $500,000 reduction in their base components. So that got us basically to the 24.7.
So, Your Worship of Council, we are sitting at, like I said, at $23.8 million. As Edo's been talking about with TBD, target value design, it's going to be tough to get to that $23.8 million. Now, Rec Board did approve the 23.8, knowing that we can still cut some things out of this facility. Now, is it appetite of this council to cut some of these things out? I mean, it's still gonna be a nice facility once we're said and done, correct?
Absolutely.
But there is some amenities that are gonna be added. Now, looking at that list, I know, Myron, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about that, because once you cut some of this out, it's hard to get back. So, it's something that,
We did look at this list in earnest, and from what I've seen in working with this municipality for over 6 years, the community takes a lot of pride in building right, doing it right. And you can see that from the epicenter from this building. And I think that compromising on project scope and reducing these costs, I think the final product and the appearance and those types of things are going to suffer. And I think, and it's difficult because you're faced with budget, but also you're faced with the expectation of the public in what they've seen in the drawings and things like that. So when we had looked at this earlier, one of the things that out of that 1,665,000 is the curtain walls and the mini arena. Those are things that could be added in quite simply at a later date. But when you start taking out some of these other things, it's a real concern. The other thing is, we know that we can work on further reductions as we go through the construction process and work it down. And we know that there is some risk values that can be received back from the contractor. We've also had some discussions on additional sponsorships, which, in the public realm, I can't discuss, but there is opportunities for additional revenues that we're quite confident about as well. So there's a number of factors that come into play. When we had boiled this all down, we come up with a value of 25,910,000, which is 9% over the budgeted amount. When you remove that entire 1.665, that's about 4% over the 23.8 million that was budgeted. Now, we don't know what the built-in risk is. I mean, you've asked that question, but until we get further along, we don't know what that value is.
That's correct. So as Administrator Thompson said, there is built-in risk in any GMP contract, as I had previously mentioned, some built in, quite a bit of it. It may have been through fear or unknown, or maybe no appetite to go after the job. There were 3 that really took a good look at this, and I believe were able to reduce the risk to a point that they were comfortable. As an example, and only as an example because it was identified as a separate cost, the value of the work created for the, you can only state as a Stantec scope of work, was identified as 2.36 million with a contingency of about 11%. So being site work, I can see a risk of 11% being somewhat normal. And I would assume that you probably see not double-digit risk in the rest of the project, but I would see no less than 5%, if not a little bit more, if I were providing you with a somewhat educated guess. Based on the work that the contractor, the proponents have demonstrated to us in previous projects, both Delmore and Eagle, they're doing 4 projects together already for the city of Edmonton, for Edmonton Public Schools, in the same kind of approach they've used for this. We found that they've been very upfront at identifying what is an opportunity, not taking a risk as a quick and easy profit, and really employing a collaborative approach with an item called building at the last responsible moment. So as we go through the process of pre-construction services and we identify the savings that we're willing to accept, if additional savings are realized through the process and sequencing of the construction, then those savings are not applied as a profit to the contractor or the contractor's partner. They're identified as an opportunity to insert back priority items that may have been removed. at least not past the last responsible moment. And I think the example I gave at rec board was, if you wanted to change your foundation to a different foundation, but the building's already half up, you've passed the last responsible moment. But if you want to put back the mini sticks, you can do it at any point in time, and as long as it hits the priority that this council identifies, or as your stakeholders will identify, we just keep ticking off, which ones have been passed and which ones are still opportunities. So that's the kind of collaborative delivery that a CM gets you to the point where now you can execute the stipulated sum contract, which is fixed, which creates a zero risk component to council, which is eventually where we're going to get to.
Councillor Hoover?
Just want to back up a little bit, maybe ask a little more general questions. I know through this discussion, I think you've clarified things for me, but I will say when I first looked at this, I found this really difficult to read. I mean, I'm coming from a layperson's perspective. You guys have gone through this before. From looking at this, I found it really confusing to try and understand really what the bottom line is. Maybe so I'll maybe paraphrase a little bit and clarify if I'm understanding correctly, because it looked to me like this was coming back to get what we proposed to our community through the public open house is about $31 million. So essentially what they've given is each bid is given a list of things that they can either eliminate or give alternate methods or materials in order to reduce those costs. So essentially we're going to have to make a choice here as a council to eliminate some of those things. And I believe you're saying that as they realize, or if they realize savings, they can add these things and we'll give priors to things. Am I understanding it correctly?
That's correct, Councillor. Absolutely.
Your worship, to CO Thompson, is it okay if we call up Justin to come up and talk
Sure.
about some of the finance that we can look at in the future? Justin, can you do
Before we do that, I'd like to
Okay,
make
sorry.
sure everybody fully
fair
understands
enough.
the project that's in front of us and has the opportunity to ask questions at this stage.
Okay.
Councillor Stenvik?
So you have on here highlighted the southeast exit stair, and you said it's a considerable amount, but there isn't an amount.
Correct. There are so many interdependencies, Councillor Stenny, that we didn't feel comfortable at this point in time providing the number when we were asked to provide these numbers. The other ones we feel more comfortable with, but based on the scope that's there and based on the understanding of what we have and the fact that it's a rated 2, we know that there's a considerable value in that. We didn't feel comfortable approaching the proponent who is being recommended for award because they haven't been awarded the project. So unfortunately, we don't have that understanding that we could have provided a better number to council. We know it would be, though, a significant number. And wouldn't, again, change the outlook of the proposed design. We're eliminating an exit stair, which is only from second directly to outside. It has a different design feel to it, but it's certainly an opportunity without changing any effect on the deliverables.
Continue.
And just further, if I may, and this might not be for yourself, I'm just looking at the administrative recommendation, and I see here that we are looking at approving a guaranteed maximum price at the 23.8. So we are not looking at approving anything above that. We are looking at, this is council's bottom dollar. This is what we have agreed to based off of the budget discussions that we've had. So we are not, as it might appear, going over what we have already agreed upon. Am I correct?
That is correct. That came from the recreation board. I did ask if there's an appetite for putting monies back in, and they wanted to keep it at 23 million.
Okay,
That's what I said at that time.
thank you.
Just for clarification, I believe that what CEO Thompson was discussing would take us beyond that if council wished to consider it.
Right.
Is that a correct
That's right, Your Worship.
clarification? Councillor Hoover?
And just another thing that Edo had mentioned in there that I just want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. With regards to electrical and mechanical, was there a portion of this that went out, when it went out for bid, that wasn't provided? So things like mechanical and electrical, a portion of the design that wasn't included that would have been somewhat up to the bid to fill in the blanks?
Excellent question, Councillor. So the mechanical and electrical drawings were at 90%, and this is not an issue for a stipulated sum tender. So the documentation that was provided is very robust relative to other construction management proposals, because at the time when we started this project, we committed to administration that even though no direct delivery was actually approved, we would continue with the documentation as if it was a stipulated sum tender. In many cases, Councillor, a CM contract is probably an outline specification with a few floor plans and elevations, and then a tour of the facilities that we saw, and we would tell the proponents, this is the area, this is the floor plan, this is an outline specification, and it ought to look like one of these facilities that we saw. And then they give us a GMP. In this case, the documentation was robust, it was well-informed, and I believe if I were to advise council, I would believe that some proponents may not understand what that delivery of CM would have meant, and understood that this is not a tendered number, and that the 90% gave them an ability to create an internal tender if they chose to do so, and provide us with a relatively risk-adverse number, including M&E. In some cases, that was done by the low four proponents, unfortunately, that other proponent was non-compliant. All those M&E numbers were very, very, very close. So they did and executed the way they felt their risk, internal risk would allow them to provide a price within the GMP. Now, at 90%, which again is a very robust M&E set, we have 10% room to work with the construction manager and pre-construction services to target value design those two systems in particular. Now, in many cases, we as a consulting team now have to redo work if we have to dig deep into that system design, rather than doing the work after the proponent is selected, and then the systems are then designed in cooperation with the subtrades. We took them quite a ways down the path, and now we'll have to redo some things to meet their requirements, or meet some opportunities for targeted value design.
Subsequent?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, it's a lot of terms that I don't necessarily understand, I'll just try and again paraphrase this.
Okay.
So you're saying that just those two components, mechanical, electrical, essentially went out 90% design, there was a 10%, that was,
Yeah.
but that was not 90% of the entire project, just 90%.
That's 90% of that
Of
system.
just those two components. Now, how much portion of the entire project would that?
Architecturally, is almost 100% with some open items on material selection. And my apologies to council, yourself, your worship, I am not so conversant on the scope of work that was the site that was out of ECI scope and in Stantec scope. They would be more conversant and to determine what that would be, but it's $2.6 million to your bill.
So a chunk of, a $2.6 million chunk of this project, there's a 10% variance for the.
A 10% contingency that was provided by the low proponent
Thank you.
on average.
Councillor Sende?
So I'm not sure that you will be able to give me an answer to this one, but I know that it's something that is first and foremost in every resident's mind right now. I understand that this is a great opportunity. Interest rates are extremely low right now. It's a great time to build and put back into our economy. It will provide jobs for people. It will provide income security for residents. It's overall a wonderful project. But given the fact that we are dealing with a pandemic and everything is shutting down, and we don't know how long that is going to be for, how detrimental is that going to be to this project? And is it going to adversely affect our residents? Is it going to mean that we have to really consider our budgets next year when we're looking at raises to property taxes? Because that's something that I'm not okay with. It's not something that we expected going into this, and I don't think that residents should take the brunt of this project head on when they are dealing with job losses and unsteady income. So as much as I love this project and I want to back it 100%, I want to know that our residents are not going to be in trouble if we do.
Theo Thompson, I believe that was
Might
a
be good.
introduction.
Might be a good time for Justin to
give us financial wisdom.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. So you probably have known about the unprecedented 2 rate reduction from the Bank of Canada. So my job in this whole proposal is to give you the kind of the financing, the overall how it would affect residents and whatnot. So if we back up a little bit to the 2020 budget and the 3-year operating budget, as mentioned in the borrowing bylaw, we gave the commitment that 1% tax increases should be sufficient to take on this borrowing. They were, with the current debt servicing over the next several years, they were at higher interest rates. With the Bank of Canada making 2 reductions for the prime lending rate from 3.95 down to 2.95, that affects both the interest and principal payments over the term of the loan. One thing we have kind of thrown around is splitting the borrowing between our local service provider, local banking provider, as well as ACFA. Now the current rates with service, there's a typo there, it's actually prime minus 0.5 for any long-term borrowing. So you're looking at 2.45%. Most of the calculations done in the 10-year capital plan are around that 3 to 3.5%. ACFA has confirmed, in the memo here, I did put between 2 and 2.3% from ACFA. That has been confirmed that the rate that people got for 25-year money is just over 2% at 2.06. I went back the 40 years through ACFA's rates, and that is the cheapest rate that they have ever had for 25-year money. But that is entirely your decision. If I just want to kind of show you the current rates and the current impact to residents if council wishes to include some of these things that have been cut out. What does that all mean? There's a little table there, that's at 2.3% on debt servicing. So an extra $1.5 million is around $79,000 a year in debt servicing. At the 2.11 million that is presented by CA Thompson, you're looking at debt servicing around 111,000 a year on top of the budget amounts. The second note down there is additional sources of revenue. If council should want to look at the overall 10-year capital plan, what projects we've got slated in that 2021 slot, we could potentially look at some MSI funding. There is some projects that, based on the economic development and the current situation, may need to be pushed a few years. The current lots that we have for development is just under 400 residential lots. I don't have the numbers on industrial and commercial, but 400 lots is a good inventory where we could delay some of the other infrastructure type projects if need be. We can review the rollover reserve as well to make sure those projects that we have got allocated money are going to go ahead as well. So, and then as mentioned, identify major suppliers for more sponsorship opportunities. But it would be a recommendation that if the direction did come from council, that borrowing would be the last resort. We would reprioritize the current projects that are on the 10-year capital plan, especially that 2021 slide. Open it up for any questions on finance.
Councillor Sende?
So just to confirm, you are not projecting that this is going to mean that we need to drastically increase or increase above the 1% that we were considering for next year at budget time for our residents?
That's correct. 2 factors, yeah. So the increase in debt servicing as well as the reduction of that 1%. I can't give you 100% confidence, but our 3-year capital plan did have that slated as 1%, and we will do our best to keep it at that 1%.
Councillor Swab has her hand.
Councillor Swab?
Sorry, I have to mute. My question is, you're hoping for funding from businesses and stuff, but they're in a really slump right now with this pandemic. Are you thinking they're going to be able to help fund us? Because right now, what I've heard on the news and from people in our community, it's really tough right now, and we don't even know if this is how long this pandemic is going to go on.
For sure. I'll pass you over to the CEO, Thompson, for that answer.
Well, we are quite optimistic. I did have a discussion last Friday with a major industry, and we don't know what the value is, but quite optimistic in that. So until we're a little further down the road, we won't know exactly what that is, but our confidence level is quite high.
Will?
Yeah, thank you. I certainly hear the comment with this pandemic. I know it's a scary time. I know it's not just a pandemic, it's the economy. It's everything that we're facing right now is certainly a time of uncertainty. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this from so many different aspects. One thing that echoes to me is just reflecting back to our past mayor, what she often would say when we were dealing with budgets and capital projects, is who's paying for it? Well, growth is paid for. So the capacity that you see in our budget is because of the growth that we've had. And I look at the benefits to, like, sooner or later, we're going to have to do something, and that's getting money circulating in the economy. This offers jobs. It offers money and support to businesses, which also offer jobs, because our economy is reliant on us doing things. And then there's the cost if we don't do something. There's the residents right now. People are traveling to do practices outside our community because we don't have the capacity for what we need to do to provide. So all those things weigh in on this. I mean, there's not a perfectly right answer, and there's not a perfectly wrong answer, but I know that there is a lot of benefits. At some point, we're going to get past this pandemic, and I know that out of Blackfalds, with this being built, we'll see an NHL hockey player come from Blackfalds. We'll see the dreams of our kids come from Blackfalds, and where they would never get, there's a lot of politics in hockey where they may never ever got a look at. They would get looked at because the scouts are going to be coming to Blackfalds, and the business, and what this says to other investors, to our community, has another statement in itself. So I look at all those things, coming from a point when I first started, when we didn't have any land, even though we wanted businesses, and then all the process to get us to where we are. One of the things that in history is when we finished the arena off, it provided an economic stimulus to our businesses. It's been something that has provided exponential growth. So it's definitely something that's a benefit. And when you're thinking about those decisions, I thought put all that stuff together. So that's my comment. I don't know if there's a perfectly right answer or perfectly wrong answer, but that's everything that I've considered.
Councillor Hoover?
I don't want to minimize the concerns that are being expressed about the future based on this current situation. I think it's weighing heavy on everybody. My question is just purely numbers, not, again, minimizing it, just putting that aside on the shelf. When we first looked at this, obviously you did some projections in terms of the cost of borrowing. Now, based on these new rates, how much savings are we likely to realize in the cost of this borrowing?
I'm not going to do the math in my head. I do have those numbers in my 10-year capital spreadsheet. If you'd like to give me I can give you kind of a roundabout. It could be, I'm not even going to guess, because we're talking about a big dollar amount on the $17 million worth of borrowing based on the $23.8 million budget. But I can run back and kind of give you a ballpark figure on the overall impact over the 25 years if we borrowed the full amount.
I know from my perspective, if we're considering going above what we've talked about budgeting, I'd be comforted to know how much savings we would realize based on these rates. So from my perspective, I'd like to see.
Before you do that, Councillor Cindy, did you require?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Go ahead, thank you, Director.
Run.
So
Councillor Cindy.
I am just curious, what type of conversations we have had with the proposed AJHL team. Are they willing to put plans on hold a little bit if the current state requires it? Because I'm not 100% certain we are going to be shovels in the ground and boots working as quickly as we would like if this continues.
Councillor Cindy, I don't know if I can answer for the owners. I know they want to be on the ice in September 2021. There has been some conversations to them in regards of could be late fall, and they just said, well, let's take one step at a time. That's all they said.
So they're willing
Let's
to
just
just.
take one, we'll take one
Okay.
step at a time. And that's what he said. Not trying to get the name out of them, still would say.
I'm more concerned that we still have the financial backing from them.
Yeah, I mean, this is their home.
Perfect.
They told me that this is their home. They're excited about this project. So I wouldn't want to see it delayed, but I mean, it's going to take some time because of stuff. Who knows how long it's going to take, but they know it's step by step.
Well, I don't think anybody wants to necessarily see it delayed, but
Yeah.
unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, if we're trying to get in, like you were talking about, in regards of supplies might come later or whatever else. Maybe some labor problems, but rather than that, that's about it.
Okay, so it shouldn't be a concern, is what you're saying?
No.
Perfect.
Deputy Mayor Olford.
While I'm in favor of this project, it's a needed thing in our community. I'm just wondering, with the shutdown in Quebec and Ontario of non-essential services such as construction that may end up coming this way, has there been any discussion on what might that happen? And if that's the case, will we have to re-tender? Because secondary to that, right, this is over our cap of what we said was 20.
Councillor, through your worship, I believe Ontario did identify that construction is an essential service in many cases. Obviously, we're not Ontario. I would assume that any stimulus within the province would be well received. I can only give you our personal and the company's position. We've been told in no uncertain terms, unless there's a critical turn in health, who knows? Any project that has capital attributed to it and is prepared to be ready to get going, will get going. And because it's ready, not quite shovel ready, but ready. And without design work, you can't get to the construction side of it. So on our end, thank God that we're working in this field that we're in. So we heard it with Bonnyville centralized high schools modernization that got put on the, not the shelf, but it happened to go to tender just before the election, and then nobody wanted to approve it. And now when we finally approve it, we're in the situation that we're in. But Minister Panda, who was at our conference call, said, if this thing doesn't start, there are going to be heads to roll. And he made it very clear this thing's going, because that part of the world absolutely needs it. Now, again, if there's a health condition that we can't, work within, that's an issue, force majeure, and everybody has that in their contract, including the owner, including the client. Is this floor shaking? Is that?
It's the
that's
train.
right there. I was gonna say, back away, get your mask on. I'm not feeling very reluctant to flinch.
You're
My
fine.
apologies, I don't want to make light of this, but I think that's the intent. And we can risk mitigate a lot of things. Having Eagle supply the basic structure of the facility, if that's the intent, is locally supplied just over there. We're not getting steel from Quebec or God knows what from the United States. We're mitigating risk. And it's a great approach to how to execute this project. And if we can, like Councillor Taylor echoed his statements that he made at Rec Board, if we can get this community working, notwithstanding, there are realistic factors that you as a council and the people you represent. It's critical. I don't begrudge you any of this process and the decisions you have to make, but you're getting people to work. and it's perhaps a good thing, and it's been, I think, if I were living here, I'd applaud you for getting it started, and I have no bias in this, just to let you know, you've paid us the bulk of our fee, right now, we're on the replenishing part of our fee, my apologies. So, on construction administration, we don't do very well, but we're here for the duration, and it's certainly in supporting council, whatever direction they have for any changes in the documentation. That's ours to own.
Councillor Hoover, and then Councillor Schwab after that.
Is just a quick question, similar to what the last thing I think that Councillor Olford asked. So not talking about the project itself, but in this motion here that's been recommended. If for some reason that this motion didn't pass, what would be the next step? If we were considering changes or we weren't happy with this estimate, what would be the next step?
Well, from our perspective, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but you have contracted with nobody and you have full jurisdiction on what you've sent out. You can terminate this tender without cost. Nobody's suffered anything at this point in time.
I'm not suggesting that we don't move forward, but just in terms of getting an estimate. I mean, if we reject this particular bid, what would be the next step?
Yeah, so the next step would be, what are we changing? And now we're kind of mining the information that we received from the proponents, and this is what architects hate to do, especially when municipalities also. What would you do that would be value added? Well, why the hell am I gonna tell you? Because you're just gonna use it for somebody else if I don't get awarded. We in essence do the same thing, Councillor. We take that targeted value information, repackage the project within that, and go back out to the marketplace and see what they would tell us in that approach. What I would submit is, based on this delivery vehicle that we worked hard to try to advise that this is the right direction in the event that not the pandemic happened, but in the event that these multiple scopes would hit, which they did, this is the right documentation, this is the right delivery model to work with the proponent to get you to the same place without being beholden to stipulated subcontract. So whichever way you vote or whichever direction the motion goes in its simplest terms, whatever number you give us, that's the number we have to achieve, guaranteed. And those targeted value lists, if you tell me it's 20 million, we'll get like this. And at this point in time, at 23.8 or 24 and change, we've identified what we can give you, and we're not affecting program. Maybe if you ask me to dig a little deeper, I'm now affecting programs, so it's more of a lop it off of me. Is library gonna go? Is junior A gonna go? Is the bowl gonna go, right? That's a complete change of scope, which would be a bigger hardship. I think with the delivery we have, you don't have to be as drastic as get the information, change the documentation, retender. We have that opportunity within the vehicle that we selected as a contract. I hope that makes sense.
Councillor Schwab and then Councillor Taylor.
Is there a deadline to get back to these companies that have put in the RFP?
There is a stale dating of the RFP. Councillor, my apologies, I do not know what that is in RFP, but I have a feeling it's 90 days.
Okay.
But we do have a schedule that was attached to this RFP that identified 2021 July is a substantial completion date, which I'm sure may be in jeopardy because of the pandemic that we're under. So that's the other part of the pre-construction services with a successful proponent that we'd be talking to. And perhaps that would lessen the risk, because part of the scope of work that has the most found conditions, building structure on a site, you never know what the geotechnical is, with the railway line, would be perhaps mitigated by a certain percentage because it's not now impacting this July schedule.
Okay, and subsequent,
Go ahead.
If we decided not to go forward with this project and had to put out for another RFP at a later date, what would the cost be to our community?
It feels like it would be increased, that's for sure, because there's additional work to put out the proposal in itself. And if we took any of the targeted value design components to redo in the documentation, I would assume that there would have to be some compensation for that part of the process as well.
Okay.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. This question is in financial. I know we talked earlier about cleaning up some debenture stuff, but with this low rate, is there anything else that in our capital that we could take advantage of this low interest rate? Is there anything else that's still left hanging out there that we could still see further savings in?
And you're lucky because Director DeBresso has come back up to the podium, so.
Perfect, thanks.
CEO Thompson, may we turn it over to?
Yeah, by all means, your worship.
Definitely a good question. The four debentures that I propose that we bring back to the table earlier this year, they're the interest rates of 5 and 6%. Using hopefully our year-end financials to pay them off will ease up about $240,000 worth of debt servicing. There are two more debentures on the books, that being the Abbey Centre and the RCMP station. Those interest rates are going to be definitely a little bit higher than what we're seeing now. I haven't got the figure in front of me, but those amounts are quite substantial, like in the millions. So they're going to be a little bit harder to find that money to pay off them to ease up future debt servicing. So at this stage, I cannot say that we would be able to pay them off anytime soon. But 2024 and 2025 is when they become due. So they're not that far to go, but there's about just under $1 million worth of debt servicing in those two debentures. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very well.
Excellent. So I did some rough numbers. Sorry, and
No, go ahead.
okay, I compared the interest rate of 3.5% that I've got in the 10-year capital plan down to 2%. I had to run it a couple of times because the amount saved over the 25-year period is substantial. It's around that $3.4 million in less payments. So that kind of gives you the context of those interest rate reductions and the impact that it will have over a 25-year term borrowing. It is substantial, the interest that you will reduce.
I couldn't, Councillor Powell, before Councillor Stendhal. Go ahead, Councillor Powell.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, $3.4 million is a significant amount. So I think knowing that definitely helps.
And
Makes
right
you
twice.
Thank you.
Councillor Stendhal.
If we could actually just go back to what Councillor Taylor asked, I think that there was maybe a misunderstanding on my part. I thought he was asking if there was any possibility to maybe renegotiate those other debentures to bring those interest rates down.
Quite possibly. There is a function through ACFA to get a payout figure, and that payout figure will give you a stop loss, and that's kind of like your penalty that will be added onto the principal amount. They do, I think, what's called an interest rate swap. I don't know all the technicalities, but they pretty much tell me a number, and at the end of it, definitely we can request that. And on the adverse there, go back to our local banking provider at around that 2.5%. We could have some additional savings there. But once again, I don't have that information in front of me, but it is a possibility.
I think we all appreciate you looking into it. Thank you.
Okay.
Council, are there any further questions? So just to summarize very briefly, and it might require Director Barnes or our ACI to answer these questions. As we're moving down, right now we have a new cost of $24,735, $770. And in front of us is the number of 23,800. So how will we move from, first of all, from that number that is in the new cost down to the 23,800?
Your worship, through you, the answer is simply we have to work with the proponents if retained in the pre-construction services part of the work or the phase to identify to this group and perhaps the rec board and others what those opportunities look like. Notwithstanding, there are perhaps low-hanging fruit that we didn't feel comfortable at proposing. I will mention them. Bonding is a cost. It's identified in contract and submitted to GMP. In other projects that Delmore and Eagle have worked on as cooperators, we've been able to eliminate some of the bonding. Bonding is an insurance. It is a risk item that council might feel is beneficial, but it is a cost to it. And if Delnor is bonding Eagle and they both seem like their peers, in my opinion, that's maybe double securing a value of work that might not be necessary. It's not $1 million, but it might be 50, 60,000, and that's just working with 2 sub-trades right now. Then you have bondings from sub to sub-subs as well. So every step you go below, there's a value for that bonding. In some of the projects we've been doing, we've actually eliminated the bonding. And the risk was absorbed by the client. The client, I can disclose, was Edmonton Public Schools. And they're not very they are risk adverse, but they felt that it was better to put the value of that cost into the school rather than into the ensuring that the value of work wasn't being executed. So there are smaller things, Your Worship, that help get you there without, again, any pain to the programming. But I believe that we will provide you at least with a very good list of information to choose from. We hope to do it quickly and efficiently with the understanding that we don't want to change the complexity of the finish or the programming, especially the programming, but we'll try to get to some value.
Thank you. That answers one question. Now, the second question that we have in front of us right now is suggestion by CEO Thompson that we consider some of the our target value design considerations and decide whether we want to utilize all of them or part of them. Do we have to make that decision tonight, or are those things that you mentioned drop dead date for every one of these?
Your Worship, again, for us, not to belabor the point, whatever value you come up with, we work to. So if council were to approve a larger value, then we have to work to that value. It would not stop us by any stretch of the imagination to continue the pre-constructive processes and to identify targeted value design approaches that could reduce the cost even further without compromising the program or the design intent. So even if you give us the bigger number, we're still going to work to take it to what we understand is the level of recommendation that was provided by the rec board. If we could get it to 23.8 and maybe the risk changes or the bond leaves and we keep whittling down, we're going to provide that. That's part of the requirement through this delivery model known as construction management. It would never stop. So whether we're low, whether we're high, we're always going to try to work between that delta.
Okay. So CEO Councillor Appel, sorry, you're on just over
right
there
in
a
the
little
middle
bit.
of the, I know, that's the.
Thank you.
Right, so sorry, just to further clarify then, the number that we come up with today is the guaranteed maximum price. So that is the absolute most we're going to pay, and that's the number that goes in the contract. And anything throughout the year and a half, throughout the process that we whittle down is savings for us.
Correct.
Just clarification, because I don't really understand when you say that. First of all, they would try to put all the extras in before it was a saving to us, so.
So whatever number that we get to, whether it be 23.8 or 24.7 or 25.9 or whatever number it is, that is the absolute maximum price that we would pay. So any savings that we find throughout the construction process, if they find toilets that go on sale, just as an example, some fixtures or something they can get that are more cost effective, that we save that money. So what we're proving is just the absolute top maximum price. The price cannot go up from there.
So I guess my question to you is, you need to know from council whether or not, if there's money being saved, you put them back into the target value design considerations that are being eliminated, or we take a savings.
That, Your Worship, that is correct, and Councillor Appel, both of you are correct. You're saying the same thing. Any efficiencies we find in the guaranteed maximum price, the GMP, is value that's attributed in cost to what we've done. Now, council, at the last responsible moment, can look at that target value design list, and if we can prioritize that and really stick to it, 1 to 10. If we can take those savings and apply it to number 1, and we haven't passed the last responsible moment, or we don't have to do something extraneous to increase the cost that we've identified, then you can, in essence, pull the trigger on building that targeted value design. If we've passed that one in the last responsible one, Your Worship, it'll be clear. We will strike that from the target value design and move to the next priority. And then so on and so forth, till we either pass on all the targeted value designs, and you might be left with a cost savings that you can do with what you wish. Put back, pay down the finance, however it works, you're reducing something. But if the intent of council, again, through what Administrator Thompson had said, you want to build as much as you can for the value that you have for the citizenship, we will make best efforts to make sure we identify that in this priority approach that we have through the collaborative project that we're working on to collaboratively deliver.
Thank you. Councilor Seni, did you have another point? I wasn't sure whether I missed one of your hands.
Nope.
Okay, thank you. So right now, CEO Thompson, did you want to elaborate on some of the things that you thought might be looked at in the target value design considerations, or should we just move ahead with the recommendation we received from the Recreation Board?
Well, Your Worship, I think right now is not the time to go into those individual items, but when you look at them and, you're leaving library purpose space room unfinished, you're not putting a canopy over some of the areas, you're removing the glazing, the glass. I mean, part of the whole interest in the project was having the library and arena all together and having those views and creating that interest. And I think removing some of these in my feeling is that it takes away from the overall facility, and to remove, an additional $1.18 million. So I think council's consideration, if it was to leave those in, go with a higher number and still work at reducing those amounts, still continue to work at that, to me, makes sense. I mean, leaving, for instance, the outdoor space off the library unfinished. I mean, going back after the fact and trying to finish those is going to be at higher costs, right? We're going to experience higher costs and frustration and all sorts of things. So that was the purpose of bringing that up, Your Worship, is to provide a little bit of insight from that. I think the architects have done a good job on whittling down some of those prices that can be taken into consideration. But I think some of the things that we talked about with risk and bonding and other things, we feel confident that we can bring that price down. That means working together over the next year and a half and having a communication with council and the rec board and defining those.
So when I look through the architectural designs, the one thing that does bother me, you mentioned one of them, which was the canopy over the library. The other one is delete the ramp connection to existing arenas. And that was on level 2. That right now is rather, I believe, an important part of our project. And when people have been looking at the design, that was one of the areas that I felt was relatively important in the ability for people to move back and forth. Delete one library multi-purpose room. Again, we haven't heard from the library board on that, but they've looked at many uses for that multi-purpose room. There are a number of things in there, and I want to know whether council wishes to look at those and consider, with the cost saving in interest that has been identified, whether they wish to keep those within the project And then if we can stay within 23.8, it will be definitely worked towards, but with the recognition that those are going to remain in the budget no matter what. And I guess I just need feedback from council because I think that there are a couple of things in there that might be important to the public. Councillor Hoover?
Yeah, I think the information that I'm focusing the most on is that savings, that the unexpected savings in cost of borrowing, and I'm inclined to at least look at a portion of that, maybe not say, hey, good, we're saving potentially $3.4 million, let's throw that back in the pot, but maybe a portion of that. Even if we were to consider about a third of that, we could potentially look at approving up to $25 million and realize, in the end, still a savings from what we were originally looking at, and likely gain some of the things that were being eliminated during this bid process. My feeling is ultimately what it costs the community in the end. I think we can find a balance.
Councillor Stanley?
I am not comfortable increasing the amount for this project. I've made that quite clear from day one that I wanted to stay within our budget or under the budget. I do hear that there are things that are maybe not on this list, such as bonding, or perhaps some other measures that we could take to reduce that. So I don't think that we need to look at this list necessarily as an all-inclusive, we're getting rid of this, 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 and this. I think that we can trust that our administration and ACI and our rec board can come together and maybe find those savings so that we can stick to our 23.8 budget.
Deputy Mayor Over?
I have to agree with Councillor Stindy. We had a budget. We said it was a hard one, and we should try and keep to it as much as possible. And from what I've been hearing, we can stay in that budget and still keep all of our program space. And that's where I would like to lead is keeping in our the program space.
Any other councillor wish to weigh in on anything? Director Barnes, would you like to come forward and walk us through the recommendations? And Councillor Taylor has his hand up. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I saw things on that list that I would like to see in there. Certain things like, I think even the mini stick rink, we could probably put it at a later date. It wouldn't be detrimental to the project to go forward as it is. You probably could be happening through some fundraising. I certainly, at this uncertain time, I have certainly mixed feelings. Usually I reflect on, things that other people, when they built things in their community, had said, like when they built the community hall, people were saying, why are you building that way over there? And the community grew into it. There's always this part about when you're building something, you're thinking about it today, but you're not thinking about it in tomorrow terms. But it's coming to a decision based on what we're dealing with today versus what we're dealing with tomorrow. And I don't know that there's a perfectly right answer. My heart right now is leaning more towards just sticking with our budget and seeing the project go through. There are things again that I think would be nice. I don't know. We could look at that. I don't think we have to get the dirt in the ground moving and stuff like that. I think if we have to come back and look at it, we could maybe look at it when we're dealing with next year's budget, but not right now. If there's that point of no return, well then we've passed it. So.
Thank you. Director Barnes?
If your worship, any other questions before I move into the administrative recommendation?
Not seen any?
So there's two parts to this. Of course, we have to award the construction to Delaware Construction Legal Builders, who's your first approval for the expansion project, of course. And then your second one is to approve the CCDC 5B contract, construction services to the town of Blackfalds approved guaranteed maximum price that we talked about. The $23.8 million that was approved in this year's budget. That's what's on the table and approved unanimously from the record.
Thank you. And one thing I do really appreciate in this first recommendation is that Eagle Builders is right across the road. They are going to be working and employing members that are close within our community and very close to our
Yes.
community.
Correct.
Yes.
So I think that that is something that was really important to me when I saw it. We're building local. Councilor Stanley?
I'm prepared to move the Rec, Culture and Parks Board recommendation to award Delnar Construction, Eagle Builders, the construction management services of the Blackfalds Multiplex Arena Expansion Project.
Thank you for that, Councilor Stanley. Is there any debate on that motion?
Councillor Swope.
Councilor Swab, thank you.
Okay, so I am not in favor of the motion, and I'm just gonna explain the reasons why. With the uncertainty right now in the world, people in our community have lost their jobs. They're struggling financially. Businesses are closing, and some, when they come back, aren't gonna be able to survive. We've never experienced a pandemic like this before. And I do support building the arena and library in our community, but with so much uncertainty right now in this world, I cannot support going through with this project. I think at this time, we need to be financially responsible. In a few months down the road, maybe we could feel comfortable about looking at this again.
Thank you. Anyone else? That's Councilor Taylor.
And just a comment, I do feel financially responsible by making this decision. Like I said earlier, growth has paid for it. It's given the capacity to people who have come from 3,500 to now have actually laid the foundation for us to have the capacity to deal with it. It's not, I feel we're not being irresponsible by doing this, and I think if anything, when there are jobs that are being jeopardized, certainly when we have one local employer that we're helping is beneficial to our community. The most important thing for our economy is to get money circulating again, and I feel that that's a responsible decision.
Thank you. Anyone else? Before this vote, what I'll do is I'll ask all in favor, and then I will ask if either Councillor Schwab or Councillor Taylor to answer if they're in favor, and then I will ask if there's anyone opposed, and if either of the ones facing us are opposed, they can speak forward as well. So, all those in favor? Councillor Taylor?
In favor?
Councillor Schwab?
Opposed.
All those opposed? Sorry about that. We have the motion is carried.
So, question, were you in favor, Mr. Mayor, or Your Worship, or were you opposed?
I'm in favor. Thank you, I'm in favor.
Thank you.
So, second part of the recommendation? Councillor Stenby.
I am prepared to move the Rec, Culture and Parks Board's recommendation to council, identifying that the award is for a CCDC 5B contract pre-construction services to a town of Blackfalds approved guaranteed maximum price of $23.8 million as approved in the 2020 capital budget.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Deputy Mayor Olford?
So just for clarification, the 23.8 includes 15 for arena, 5 for library, 1 for the dressing room, 2.5 for the parking lot, and 300 for the sewer.
Thank you for that summary. Anyone else?
Just,
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
just one comment, it's parking lot road reconstruction, I guess, basically, right? Because we're dealing with that road and everything there.
More or less. Yes,
Do you want to, is that a yes?
that is yes, yeah. Some road reconfiguration.
Okay.
And then, of course, the parking lot, the upgrade of the water sewer that we need for the facility, and then the storm sewer.
Were you able to hear Director Barnes? Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, no, that's a good explanation, thank you.
Not seeing any other hands. All those in favor? Councillor Taylor?
In favor?
Councillor Swab?
Opposed?
All those opposed? And that is just carried. Thank you very much, administration. I'd also like to thank ACI for their hard work on this project. I know it's been very, very difficult, especially over the past month, to move forward with this. I think that a lot of responsible work has gone forward from yourself, so I'd like to thank you for your hard work and administration for their continued efforts on this. Looking forward to shovels in the ground at some future point, and looking forward to alternate naming date from our AJHL team.
You'll come soon.
Thank you very much. Moving on, CEO report.
Thank you, Worship. This will likely be the shortest CEO report that I've done for council. As council is aware, I was on vacation February 20th through to March 9th, and returning to work on the 10th. For a few days until requirements came out that everybody returning from out of country was to self-isolate, which I did, and worked from home last week. My self-isolation period concluded this past Sunday. Over the period of time since returning from vacation, the key focus for the organization has been that of COVID-19. Our emergency coordination team and staff have done a great job in a difficult time. Council participated in the emergency management committee meeting yesterday, where an update was provided. The emergency coordination team is meeting Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and Manager Morrison under 6.5 business tonight will be providing an update, which will be valuable for public consumption as well. Administration will continue to stay on top of the situation, stay abreast of provincial and federal communications, and provide ongoing and accurate information to our staff and residents. And that's my report, Christian.
Thank you. May I get a motion to accept the CEO report for information? Councillor Hoover?
I will make a motion, council accepts the CEO report as information.
Debate on the motion? All in favor? It's carried unanimously. Moving ahead to bylaw 1246. And we welcome Director Bresser to the podium.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Before you have bylaw 1246/20, which is the Regional Assessment Review Board. The information was brought before Council on the March 16th Standing Committee meeting, and the motion was given for formal approval. Administration is tonight recommending the bylaw 1246/20, being the Regional Assessment Review Board, be given first reading. With that, I'll open up if there's any further questions.
Council? Councillor Rappel?
Sorry, not a question, I was prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead.
That council move to accept the recommendation of administration to give first reading to bylaw 1246/20, being a regional assessment review board for the town of Blackfalds.
Debate on the motion? All in favor? Councillor Taylor?
In favor?
Councillor Swab?
Favor?
And that is carried unanimously. And 6.4,
Thank you, Your Worship.
tax penalty relief.
Excellent. So before you have the memo on property taxation relief as well as utility relief for the citizens of the town of Blackfalds. As you may be aware, the province of Alberta announced some deferral of electricity and natural gas charges, and they also asked municipalities to consider the same effect for municipal water and sewer and outstanding property taxes. So administration is asking council to support the town of Blackfalds to remove the penalty charges and late charges for the next 3 months for individuals facing financial strain during these unique times. As you're aware, utility bills are sent out on a monthly basis and with a due date of the 15th of the following month. Penalties are accrued on the amount outstanding after the due date, as well as outstanding property taxes. I just have to clarify, these are property taxes that are outstanding from the previous year, not the current year's taxes, are assessed at 1.5% penalty every month. Administration is recommending to council to approve citizens who wish to follow this relief apply through the utilities email address as well as the property taxes email address as well. This will have some financial implications if council does approve or give direction to administration. Generally, we have around $110,000 a year in budgeted penalty revenue. So taking 1/4 of that is around the $27,500 in potential lost revenue. Even though we don't rely on interest and penalties to run the city, it is a budget line that we do have. So our recommendations tonight is that council move to accept the recommendation of administration to temporarily waive municipal utility penalties upon request to the town for municipal utilities for the period of March, April, and May 2020. And the second motion would be that council move to accept the recommendation of administration to temporarily waive property tax penalties upon request to the town on property taxes for the period of April, May, and June 2020. At this time, we didn't talk about the current year's property taxes. Once again, I'll just reiterate that first reading of the property tax rate bylaw may come April 14th meeting. At that time, if council wishes to have that discussion now on potential due dates and whatnot, we can definitely provide that direction. But I just wanted to kind of separate the overdue taxes from the current year's taxes as well, just so we're clear there. In saying that, I'll open it up for any questions at this stage.
Council, do you have any questions? Councilor Hoover?
Yeah, just wanted to understand, so with any outstanding amounts up until this point, do we have the mechanism to separate those out? Are we able to distinguish if anybody is already in arrears with any of their utility payments or in their taxes?
Yeah, there's two different mechanisms kind of working in our financial system. The utility bills are outstanding for the month. They get assessed a 5% penalty just for the current charges. And then the following month, there's no penalty on the existing charges. If that makes sense. There's only the current charges get assessed a one-time penalty of 5% if you don't meet that due date. It's the current charges. But if any payments do come in, they go onto the existing, kind of the arrears first, if that makes sense. One thing that I didn't mention in my presentation is we have a mechanism that if an account goes unpaid for 3 months, it does get transferred to the property tax. And we'll hopefully waive that as well. We wouldn't be transferring the utility bills to the property tax roll. Where on the outstanding taxes from the previous year, every month there's a 1.5% penalty on the total amount outstanding. So there's two different mechanisms. We can account for them separately. We can turn off the penalty flag that makes sense in the financial systems.
So just so I'm clear, March, if someone's in arrears, there'll be a 5% penalty, one-time penalty that'll be tacked onto that. It's not a cumulative, it's just.
That's correct.
So we're not looking at waiving anything for the month of March, just April, May, June.
Sorry, the utility bills will be March, April, and May. And because of the next penalty will be for taxes will be April 1st. So we've already assessed the penalty for March 1st for property taxes. So that's why we're recommending the next 3 months unless council wishes to backdate that, and we'll have to do some adjustment on the back end. But recommendation was for the next 3 months for both.
Does that clarify it for you?
Yes.
Councillor Taylor?
I do, but Taylor's first, yeah.
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I certainly agree with this. We need to be compassionate, but just to be clear, the FCSS has a benevolent fund, and that would be separate to this, right, for helping people, and that would be something that's available to residents as a need be.
That's right, Your Worship.
Did you hear the answer?
I did hear it, thank you.
Councillor Pell?
Thank you. So just to be clear, Director Bresser, this would be a complete waive of the fee for 3 months or a deferral of the fee for 3 months?
A complete waive,
Complete waive.
but the utility bill is still standing. That's
Right,
just
but
the
other
regular
penalties.
penalty. Yeah, that's correct.
Is there any other questions? Deputy Mayor Olford?
So 3 months may seem like a long time now, but with things changing practically daily, would we be revisiting this if it need be in May or even April?
Yeah, definitely. We can, in light of the current situation, bring this back at the earliest, which will be the May, so we'll probably bring it back mid-April for any further direction.
Any further comments? Not seeing any, or,
I'm
Councillor Hoover?
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Prepared to make a motion that council move to accept the recommendation of administration to temporarily waive municipal utility penalties upon request to the town for municipal utilities for the period of March, April, and May 2020.
Debate on the motion? All in favor? Councillor
Favor.
Taylor?
In favor?
Councillor Swab?
Favor?
And that is carried unanimously. Does anyone wish to make the second recommendation? Councillor Pell?
Oh, sure.
I move that council move to accept the recommendation of administration to temporarily waive property tax penalties upon request to the town property taxes for the periods of April, May, and June 2020.
Debate on the motion? All in favor? Councillor Taylor?
In favor?
Councillor Swab?
In favor?
That is carried unanimously. Moving down, would invite Manager Morrison and to provide a COVID-19 verbal update.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Just a brief update. Emergency management has been focusing since early March on the COVID situation as it evolved in Canada and through Alberta. Initially in March, we focused on messaging to staff and developing and updating current plans. In March, on March 10th, we provided an update to council and provided the current status on COVID-19 at that point in time. Things have changed drastically since that time, as we all know. And on the 13th of March, we started meeting as a regular group emergency management coordination committee every other day, three times a week. And this committee consists of the management team, directors, and various staff that are necessary in emergency management situations. Some of the decisions we've had to make during this time in consultation with directors and managers. On the 13th of March, we made the decision to close the arena. Part of these decisions, a large part, were to support Alberta Health Services and takes the lead in these situations, and to encourage the decrease in exposure to COVID-19. Also, realizing that if COVID-19 continued for a long period of time, we would eventually be losing some staff, unfortunately, due to health reasons. The arena was reaching its end period. It was the most logical to close at that point in time. And it allowed us to take staff from the arena to utilize elsewhere in the town. Since that time, we've had staff coming back from out of country that have had to self-isolate. We have continued to focus on providing information to staff and our residents through posters, either distributed to the staff or put on our website. Rough draft of pandemic plan was developed earlier around mid-March and has gone through to various staff members and council now in a completed form. Early on, we realized that we needed to keep the communication going amongst the community as well, so we began early media releases on what the town was doing. Our communications group has been working hard at that. Some of the things that town has done, staff has done, is one of the key things is each staff member was asked to ensure that they maintain the cleanliness of their own spaces. And that again was realizing the importance of spreading our staff around. We were very short on cleaning staff, and our custodians were working hard at ensuring that they were meeting some of the requirements to ensure proper hygiene in our community facilities. Staff from some of the other areas have been relocated, in particular to custodial to assist them. Food bank was closed to public access and was now accessed only by appointment. On the 16th of March, we confirmed that we were going to have to close the Abbey Center as well, and that's in support of the Alberta Health Services regulations and provincial regulations that are coming up. This resulted in the Abbey Center having to work very hard at notifying those people that have already booked the Abbey Center, as well as those that have memberships and whatnot, to notify them of the closures. Also, a COVID-19 webpage was created by our communications group. Again, this was to ensure that our residents were up to date in what we were receiving. A lot of the information is coming from Alberta Health Services, Provincial Operations Center, and federal health as well. And we're providing that on there as a method for our residents to gather information. Part of closing these facilities, because at the same time as the Abbey Center was closed, we closed the Civic Center to public access, and the Operations Center and other facilities within the town, while still providing services. Facilities themselves were closed to public service. This required our communications people again to put out a media release informing the public of what our decisions were. While this has been happening, along with that, we've been losing some staff due to self-isolation. As CEO Thompson explained earlier, he himself was subject to that on his return from his holidays. Staff is making the most of some of the closures. At the Abbey Center, for instance, they're taking the time to give the Abbey Center a full clean. Our parks and facilities people have been in there doing repairs, necessary repairs that couldn't be done while it was fully occupied. The play center, lights and such, there's been lights that have been out for a period of time that they haven't been able to get into repair. They've been working at those. One of the key things as well as our facilities being closed are RCMP in the community. They subsequently closed their building to public access by appointment only and for only urgent matters. This again was done in hopes of ensuring the health and safety of our staff and our community members to prevent further interaction and spread of COVID-19. Victim services at the RCMP have chosen to work from home while still being a response-driven service. They are handling most calls via phone, but when in need, they are responding to some calls. Fire departments, again, we want to be able to respond at any given time to emergency situations. As with the RCMP, their focus is to respond to those emergency situations and ensure that they have the staff healthy to do that. Our fire department has canceled all weekly training to avoid unnecessary exposure to emergency personnel. 2 members of our fire department, as a result of travel, had to self-isolate for the 14 days that our health services has put out. City of Lacombe and Blackfalds lines of communication for the fire department continues to be open, as we realize at some point in time we may have to utilize our mutual aid agreements, either or community. On the 20th of March, the pandemic plan was completed and presented to management team. That time, 3 further employees that day were put into self-isolation. Again, this is following Alberta Health Services recommendations. On the 19th of March, again in hopes of providing further information and support to our community and staff, Mayor Poole and myself, in conjunction with the communications department, prepared a video that was put on our website, encouraging all to perform proper hygiene, to assist their neighbors, to follow Alberta Health Services rules and regulations, encouraging them to call 811 if necessary, but not to utilize our medical facilities to inundate them with calls and appearances. We felt that was needed at that time and needed to be heard from our mayor and our emergency personnel. The RCP are continuing to hold their staffing levels. They have had 1 person come back from self-isolation, and they advised me that they're currently fairly well staffed. Fire departments, in efforts again to reduce the opportunity of contracting COVID-19 or coming into contact with COVID-19, have been busy reviewing their medical response protocols. And they're working with the Alberta Health Services guidelines on those. Public Works has identified all critical tasks and are working on their business continuity plans. We did have to put out a press release advising our solid waste contractor will no longer be collecting solid waste and recyclables separately. This will be done in one pickup. Part of the reason behind that is the recycling is handled and it provides further opportunity for contact to occur between staff and possibility of contracting COVID-19. Our FCSS is working diligently with the food bank. They're looking at ideas such as after the grind, possibly opening up to provide school lunch programs. Unfortunately, we did have to make the decision to cancel our Easter event. Again, with the timelines the way they are and the projections that we're hearing from our provincial partners, it wasn't possible to continue to put that in the calendar and expect people to cancel things at the last minute. We wanted people to prepare. I'm advised that Abbey Center, all bookings and refunds have been completed to date. Their stock is still good. They're coordinating with CSD for, as I said, larger maintenance and cleaning projects continually. Economic development has been working with our businesses in the community. They've been liaising with the local businesses. A web page has been created for local businesses to use as a resource, providing information as to what is available to our businesses up there. A question came up a few days ago about our dog park, and the question was whether we were going to close it. This was reviewed, and we decided at that point in time, through consultation with directors and managers, that we would put up signs. Signage was put up advising the public of the concern for COVID-19, and those signs seem to have been fairly effective from what I'm hearing. On March 23rd, we revisited our closure dates. We initially set a date of April 15th for our various departments at Abbey Center, because at the time when we made those closures, we weren't certain what we were fully looking at. We've now moved that date to May 15th. It's an optimistic date, but it's a date that can be revisited down the road. But it also allows our departments to give enough notice to cancel those bookings that were there and give those people opportunity to make other plans in whatever their bookings were for. RCMP are now looking at scaling back staff. That's the front staff, not our peace officer or police officers. The reason behind that is the more they're coming into work, the more opportunity, again, they have to come into contact with the virus. So what they're looking at is splitting the front staff to work 1 week and 1 week. So then they're not all being subject to it at the same time. Hopefully creating longevity for our staff throughout the time that we're dealing with COVID-19. There was concern about protective equipment for our emergency services and public works. We've been able to obtain masks, booties, some hand sanitizer and whatnot for our staff, and importantly, our emergency personnel. Public Works has gone further and CSD in implementing procedures to support social distancing with staff, as have all our employees. Public Works is using separate trucks, and so individuals are operating one vehicle throughout the day, allows them to clean them regularly and ensure that they're clean for the next shift, and allows them to keep the distance between each employee. FCSS continues to track the needs in the community, working with the food bank, and I understand that they're developing a procedure where we'll be able to provide hopefully food for those in need, and they're tracking those people that have traditionally used the food bank and ensuring that they are still being supplied what they need. Economic development is working with protective services to ensure they are aware of businesses that are closed. The key things we are concerned about is the safety of many businesses and whatnot that do have to close. So we want to make sure that we're aware so we can ensure that in our patrols and whatnot that we're taking a look at those businesses to ensure that we're keeping them as safe as we can in this time. As CEO Thompson indicated, we did have our first emergency management committee meeting during the pandemic here, and that was held on the 23rd. During this time, we did discuss the playgrounds in our community, which had been brought up and had been discussed at our emergency coordination committee meetings as well. And we brought it further to our emergency management committee, which consists of council members and mayor and myself, CEO Thompson, and Director Barnes. The decision at that time was to not close our playgrounds, but provide a warning signs on our playgrounds to ensure that the public residents were aware that these facilities had the possibility to possibly contaminate and be aware of COVID-19 exposure. Those signs are up in the playgrounds, and we're monitoring the situation accordingly. I've been in touch with our parks people today, and they have said the parks are being minimally used. When they went around, there was not a substantial amount of people in the parks that they went to today. As of today, the town currently has 15 staff off on self-isolation or having to stay home to look after children that are sick. 3 are currently working from home that are in self-isolation. Public Works have now completed their field level hazard assessment for attending residents and ensuring the health and safety of our staff. As some are aware, sometimes our public works staff has to attend residents in the community. The concern was, how do we do that and keep our staff healthy? So they've developed a hazard assessment which requires them to be wearing proper protective equipment, whether it be masks, booties, depending on the situation. They've also developed specific questions that are going to be asked to those residents should they have to attend, say, for a water main break or say a meter installation or meter repair or something like that. Then they'll be asking certain questions, and then that will make them decide whether they're going to put in that field level hazard assessment and wear certain protective equipment. On a provincial note, today, the Provincial Operations Center in Alberta has now been operating for 55 days, and they operate in support of Alberta Health Services. As of today, 57 new cases were announced through Alberta's Health Services, bringing the provincial total to 358. Of these, 19 are hospitalized with 7 in intensive care units, and 2 patients, I'm sad to advise, have now died. Brings the number of 2 in Alberta. Alberta Health Services reported today that a long-term care facility has an infection cluster, Mackenzie Town Continuing Care Center in Calgary, and there are several that have been positively diagnosed out there, including care workers. 3 physicians from Red Deer are among those infected, while at a physician's Bottsville in Edmonton. As a result of this, 58 patients, and 97 other healthcare workers who need to be contacted. Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Dina Henshaw, again stressed to Albertans they need to follow the public health guidance. She stated, this is not about actions the government is taking. It's down to each and every one of us. Practice social distancing if you are outside, even if only taking the dog for a walk. She further encouraged Albertans to stay connected with people, even while practicing social distancing. We're all in this together, and we need to take care of each other. She again encouraged residents, if feeling unwell, to take the COVID-19 self-assessment, which is online, on the Alberta Health Services line, and follow the recommendations. If they recommend call Health Link 811, do so. If it recommends self-isolate, do so. And the message is, if you are sick, stay home. Total cases in Canada currently, 2,233, 26 deaths. Globally, we're at 415,876 cases with 18,574 deaths. There are some good news across globally. I know there are various departments working on vaccine. There's been some good developments, so I think we can look at the positives. We've seen decrease in China's reporting numbers, so they've obviously, the work that they've done through self-isolation and communication has worked, so it can work in Canada as well. A question did come up last when we met as Emergency Management Committee. I believe it was Councillor Hoover that asked about vehicle registration. Alberta has advised the registries that Albertans and companies with registrations expiring in March and April, including those whose last names begin with B, D, G, and Y, will now have until May 15th, 2020 to renew their vehicle registrations. Driver's license and ID cards. Albertans who have birthdays from March 17th through May 14th, whose cards expire this year, now up until May 15th, 2020 to renew. Expiry dates can be found on your card, and Albertans with birthdays from March 17th through May 14th are encouraged to confirm whether or not they need to renew this year. Road tests, effective March 20th, Alberta commercial and passenger road tests have been suspended for at least 4 weeks. Road tests will resume when it's safe to do so. Albertans who have road tests scheduled will be able to rebook online as of April 17th, 2020 for a test on April 20th, 2020 or later at no additional charge. That will be the end of my update. Any questions if council has any.
Thank you, Council. Any questions? Councillor Taylor.
I don't have a question. Sorry, I don't have a question, just a comment. I sent council, and maybe I should have sent it to Ken also, is just an update on what's happening in the lodges. I got a couple emails from Melody Stoll from the Bethany group, and they've been dealing with lots of issues, you know, everything from having to service providers that come in to do hairdressing, to limiting people into the buildings, and dealing with all the coordinations they have. Nothing but respect for those working in those seniors facilities. It's a big challenge right now, and it's very dynamic, and there's no way that I can possibly go into it, but there is a lot. I sent you some information for you guys to go over, but just kudos to both what Ken and all the staff is doing and the staff of the Bethany group. So.
Thank you for that addition. Any other councils? Councillor Stenby.
I don't think that you do have an answer yet, or I feel like you would have answered my question from the Emergency Management Committee meeting. But do we know yet whether or not the cases on the geospatial maps are based off of the clinics that they were diagnosed with COVID at, or is it based off of the communities that they live in?
My understanding, Councillor Stanley, and I actually had that conversation earlier today, is that it is from the community that they reside in as a result of their Alberta Health Services card and address on hand.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much for your summary of the events. I think that your summary also highlighted the fact that as a community, we're working very hard and closely with all of the agencies that are out there. A lot of the ones you were reporting on aren't necessarily under the town's control, but we're working very closely with all of them. So I think we need to commend yourself and all of our staff for all the hard work that they're doing to try to maintain services and provide the necessary reassurance that a time like this requires. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
And I look at council for a motion to accept for information. Deputy Mayor Olford,
I'll move to accept his information.
debate, all in favor? Councillor Taylor,
In favor?
Councillor Swab,
In favor.
that is carried unanimously. Thank you. So moving along, we will go to action correspondence, 7.1. Schizophrenia Society of Alberta. And I was in contact with their executive director today, and Executive Director Ruben Rice, and she said as of today, it has not been canceled and is still a go for Sunday, May 24th. We are assessing it daily with all the updates from the government on COVID-19, and we'll give plenty of notification if there is a postponement or cancellation. It's a very worthwhile event. It's my intention, if it goes ahead, to be participating, and it would be open to members of council if they wish to participate as well. I would suggest that we wait maybe closer to the date before we reply yes or no to it, but feel free to do so as you feel fit. Is there any comment on that? Not seeing any. Could I get a motion from council to accept for information? Councillor Pell?
Yeah, I move to accept the invitation from the Schizophrenia Society of Alberta as information.
Thank you. All those in favor? Councillor Swab?
In favor.
Councillor Taylor?
In favor?
That is carried unanimously. Information? We have one item tonight, and that is the highlights of the regular council meeting of Lacombe County. Any comments? Not seeing any. That is a total of our information. Could I get a motion to accept for information? Deputy Mayor Hoover? Deputy Mayor Olford?
I move to accept information items as information.
All in favor? Councillor Swab?
In favor.
Councillor Taylor?
In favor?
Carried unanimously. Moving down to round table, I will start with Councillor Swab.
Okay, well, it was a busy month. The one thing I'm going to highlight was the Red Deer Home Show. I attended on March the 6th, and it was great. There was actually a lot of people from our community in at the Red Deer Home Show, and we were able to get some of the surveys done for the branding committee, which was nice. Other than that, you can just go online and check out my roundtable discussion there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, so it was a busy month. I think we started it, I guess we went back to the Winterfest at the Abbey. probably the best thing that happened for me this month was just the movement that between the town staff and with the Chino Club coming together and resolving issues and looking at a very forward direction. Unfortunately, we're kind of stopped in our tracks right now with everything that's going on, but eventually we'll be able to pick up and go forward with that. Other than that, everything is there. It's pretty much the same, I think, as everyone else. It was certainly a busy month, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Councillor Stenday?
I think the only thing that I'm going to talk about is that I got to read to some of the grade 4 students at Iron Ridge Intermediate Campus, which happened to be their last week of school as well. So it was very, very bittersweet for me. It was fantastic. The kids all had amazing questions. They all see their teachers as superheroes, and telling you after being home with my children for the last couple weeks and having to homeschool them, you are superheroes. You really are, from all of the parents in Blackfalds. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hoover?
It's like Councillor Taylor said, started this period off with the Winterfest, which quite enjoyed serving hot chocolate. Wasn't as mild out as it could have been, but I still enjoyed being outside. Other significant events would have been the Wolf Creek Public School, the high school announcement event, which is extremely exciting to take part in, as well as the Wolf Creek Public Schools electoral boundaries workshop, which not incredibly well attended, but I thought it was very productive.
Thank you. Councillor Pell?
Thank you. Yeah, we almost attended the same things this month. It was busy. I did have the opportunity to go with Mayor Poole to the Wolf Creek Public School Board. They had a poverty simulation with school board members and trustees and teachers and counselors from throughout Wolf Creek's jurisdictions, I guess. And that was a really well attended event. It was impressively set up and organized. They did a really great job, so that was great. We have then spent time with Wolf Creek trustees at the Blackfalds High School announcement, and then again at the electoral work review, which was super interesting. So I'm excited to see what results their consultant puts together from those meetings and what exactly he presents to Wolf Creek. Otherwise, I also actually had a really good experience the 2 days that I worked at the Red Deer Home Show. The conversations I had with people there renewed my faith in humanity. But honestly, it was a very productive weekend. So.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Holford?
Busy month as well. I'll just highlight a couple of at least somewhat feel-good items. Parkland Regional Library system is currently working on a new headquarters. By now, it looked very close to lockup, so all the windows and at least a roof on it. So good progress on that. And of course, the high school funding announcement for our town, which is super good. So hopefully we can see some of that one bit too.
Thank you. For myself, again, kudos to our Winterfest organizer. I enjoyed serving hot chocolate. Again, it wasn't quite as warm. AUMA governance meeting in Edmonton on the 19th. On the 20th, I went to Red Deer for a Red Deer River Municipal Users Group Subcommittee meeting. On the 24th, there was a special meeting of the North Red Deer Water Services Commission. And we don't want to forget on the 25th how council all wore their pink shirts to recognize Pink Shirt Day. February 26th was a formal Pink Shirt Day. On the 27th, attended a portion of the Lacombe County meeting and We were very pleased to receive a commitment from the Lacombe County for our multiplex to the amount of $2,391,000. That was divided in two motions, some for the library and some for the multiplex, but that was our total, and we are excited to work in conjunction with our county partners. On the 28th, I participated in the AUMA webinar on the recently announced provincial budget. Seems like 100 years ago with the COVID virus items in front of us. A few meetings with the AHS on the 3rd. And on 4th, I attended the interagency meeting, also on the policing committee meeting. On the 6th, I also attended the awareness event for poverty simulation exercise in Bentley. It was well attended. There was lots of municipal members, as well as Lacombe County members and Wolf Creek members, both council and staff. It was really an interesting exercise. Trade show, can't say enough about it. It was very enjoyable. On the 10th, participated in the announcement by MLA Orr of the approval of the high school construction in Blackfalds. And further to that, when Minister Madu had his conference call, he reiterated the fact that he felt that projects that have been named will be moving ahead as a priority, because they too want to see construction and jobs put out into the community. Tour of the Operations Center on the 10th. On the 11th, I had a mayor's meeting in Red Deer and attended the Harvest Meadows Outdoor Open House on the 12th. So with that, could I get a motion for acceptance for information? Councilor Stenday.
I will move to accept items 9.1 through 9.7 as information.
To get on that motion, all in favor? Councilor Taylor?
In favor.
Councilor Schwab?
In favor.
That is carried unanimously. Moving on to the adoption of the minutes, March 10th, regular council meetings. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. Is someone prepared to make a motion? Councilor Powell?
Yep, sure, I move to accept the minutes as presented.
Debate, all in favor? Councilor Schwab?
In favor.
Councilor Taylor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. March 26th, standing committee meeting. Any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. Looking for a motion to Councilor Hoover?
I move to accept March 16th standing committee minutes.
Debate? All in favor? Councilor Schwab?
In favor.
Councilor Taylor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. We don't have any notices of motion. For the good of the council, Deputy Mayor Olford?
It's a question for administration. I saw article, Red Deer Transit is going to basically a Saturday schedule. Didn't mention anything about Bolt. So then we can find out if Bolt services will be affected with their switch in services.
We can find that out and I get back to council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other councilor have anything for good of the council? I have the Water Canada magazine. I will put in the reading tray for council's review. And also there is an item that comes forward on the fax about 3 times a year. It's from an individual citizen I can't really describe it, but if any councilor wishes to have a look at it, it is a very unique item that comes to fax about 3 times a year. And I will also put that in the reading tray. We do have in-camera items, so does anyone wish to move for a break at this point? Deputy Mayor?
I'll move 5-minute recess.
All in favor? All opposed? That is carried unanimously. Couldn't see your hand that time. And that's that.